happens when your child turns 18 and suddenly their account isn't yours to manage anymore? That in-trust for account you've been carefully building, maybe for school or their first car or just to give them a leg up, officially becomes theirs. But here's the part most people miss. It's not just a money handoff. It's a tax, timing, and strategy puzzle. One that, if mishandled, could cost more in taxes than it needs to, and might send the wrong message about managing wealth. In this video, I'm going to break it all down. What really happens to entrust for accounts at age 18, who's on the hook for taxes, and how to transition those funds smartly, maybe into a TFSA, FHSA, or even an RRSP. If you're a parent, grandparent, or just someone trying to build a thoughtful financial plan for the next generation, this one's for you. So let's get into it. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Jocelyn Ozdemir, a financial advisor here at Ferguson Financial Planning. I work with clients who have saved well and want to make the most of it, whether that means reducing taxes, managing withdrawals, or making smarter decisions for the next generation. And that includes plenty of families who've set up in-trust for accounts and now find themselves wondering what to do when their child turns 18. So if that's you, you're in the right place. In this video, I'm going to walk you through one of the most overlooked areas in planning, in-trust for accounts, or ITFs. What are they? Why informal accounts can create surprise taxes at 18, and how to shift that money into registered plans like a TFSA, FHSA, or RRSP without costly missteps. If you find this video helpful, be sure to hit like and leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss future content like this. Okay, let's dive in. Let's start from the ground up. What exactly is an in-trust for account and why do people use it in the first place? Picture this scenario. You wanted to gift your child money for their future, maybe for college, maybe to give them a jolt of investment experience. So you choose an in-trust for account because it's easier than setting up a formal trust, and it still allows someone, often you, to manage the funds until the child reaches the age of majority. Why does any of this matter? Because an entrust for account isn't just a piggy bank. It has rules. For example, income like interest or dividends might be attributed back to the person who contributed the funds in the first place, which often means that usually the parent is the one facing taxes on that portion. However, capital gains are always taxed to the beneficiary or child, but again, any interest or dividends still land on your tax return until the child turns 18. Sounds straightforward, but the lines can blur fast. If you're imagining the entire account's growth is automatically your child's from day one, that's not always how the rules work. So here's how it tends to play out. You contribute money when your child is, say, 8 years old. Over time, those investments build up. But if the income portion grows large, you might see bigger tax bills in your own return year over year, especially if you've picked up things like dividend-paying stocks or interest-bearing investments. On the bright side, capital gains on investments in an ITF account are always reported on the child's tax return, even while they're a minor, so long as the gains arise from property transferred to them directly or via the trust. Let me outline this with a quick story of a friend of mine. She once assumed everything in her daughter's in-trust for account was taxed in the daughter's name, which meant paying almost no tax at all. Well, come tax time, she got an unexpected T5 slip for all the dividends that had been paid over the year. And that was attributed to her. It was a rude awakening. She had to scramble to budget for the extra tax payment, which was really challenging because she was in the highest tax bracket. Moral of the story, you want to know how attribution rules work before you're caught off guard. I won't go into too much detail on attribution rules, but know that the CRA has what's called the super attribution, which basically means that if you or anyone connected to you still retain the power to pull funds back out or decide who ultimately gets the money, the CRA can reattribute all the income, including interest, dividends, and even capital gains, back to you even after your child turns 18. And that's really the core takeaway right now. An in-trust for account is a great way for giving your kid or grandkid an early financial start, but it comes with technical tax wrinkles. If you're aware of them, you can plan around them. If you're not, you might be in for surprise taxes. And let's be honest, nobody likes those. Keep that in mind as we head into the next key point, which is what happens at the magical age of 18. Now, let's talk about that pivotal birthday. The day your child turns 18 or 19, depending on your province. They become a legal adult. At that point, the money in the entrust for account is officially theirs. People often ask, but what if I want to control it until they're 25? Legally, that's really tricky. If it's a true entrust for account, the child gains the right to manage it once they reach the age of majority. This moment can both be exciting and also a little nerve-wracking. On one hand, it's a chance for them to learn real-world investing. They can see how contributions and market growth turn their modest seed money into something bigger. On the other hand, you might worry they'll cash out and buy something impulsive, like a sports car they saw on a resale site. The truth is that the law grants them control, so it's up to both of you to communicate well. A little guidance can really go a long way. Taxes come into play differently now too. Once they're 18, if they sell an investment for a capital gain, that gain usually falls to them, of course, not you. And that could be a really good thing if your child is in a very low tax bracket or has no other income. But be mindful, regardless of when you sell, before or after your child turns 18, capital gains always fall to the child, not you. It's only interest and dividends that switch from being attributed to you to flowing directly to them. And since capital gains are the child's to claim from the start, the key consideration at 18 is the shift in attribution of the interest and dividends and the opportunity to move funds into tax-favored vehicles like a TFSA once they gain contribution room. That might or might not be ideal depending on your overall situation. For example, say the ITF account holds a bond that pays $1,000 of interest in the calendar year your child turns 18. Any interest earned before their birthday is taxed on your return, and any interest paid after their birthday should technically be taxed on theirs. That shift in attribution can significantly change your tax bill, especially if your marginal rate is higher than theirs. So timing matters for interest and dividends more than capital gains, which are always reported to the child. And that then leads to a logical question. What if the child wants to shift this money to something else, like a tax-free savings account? Well, TFSAs or tax-free savings accounts are off limit until they meet the age criteria, which is 18. So as soon as your child is eligible, there is potential to move some of the money from the entrust for account into a tax-free savings account, especially if your child doesn't need the funds immediately. Let's unpack that a little bit in our next point though. So TFSAs are probably one of the best gifts the government has given Canadians in the last couple of decades. Why? Because investments inside a tax-free savings account grow tax-free and withdrawals don't trigger taxes either. If your child is turning 18, it's a great moment to talk or to start thinking about shifting some of the entrust for money into their brand new TFSA, assuming they have the contribution room, of course. Here's the usual timeline in most provinces. As soon as your child turns 18 or 19, they begin to accumulate TFSA room. The annual limit for TFSA contributions has increased over the years, and for 2025, that limit is $7,000. That might not seem like a massive amount, but it adds up fast. By age 20 or 25, your child could have several years of contribution room lined up, allowing them to move a decent chunk of their entrust for account into a TFSA. Once it's inside a TFSA, all future gains, interest, dividends, capital gain growth, all is sheltered from tax. So let me use a real life scenario to walk you through this. Imagine your child's entrust for account is worth $40,000 on their 18th birthday. Maybe they're heading to university soon and don't need the entire amount for tuition. They could place, say, $7,000 into a TFSA right away. The rest can remain in a non-registered investment account under their own name. Next year, they can add another $7,000 into the TFSA. And the year after, another $7,000 or whatever the new TFSA contribution limit is. Over time, more of that money can become genuinely tax-free. That's a big deal if they plan to invest it for the long haul, perhaps aiming to help fund a house or a future business idea. So the big question is, should I just move everything the moment they turn 18? Well, you've got to be cautious about capital gains in the entrust for account versus the benefit of moving to a TFSA. If you move from the entrust for account to the TFSA, you might trigger a capital gain if you're selling investments or even just moving them over in kind. Whether you transfer cash or move the shares in kind, the CRA treats it as a contribution at the share's fair market value, so a capital gain or loss is triggered either way. Now, taxable to your 18-year-old if attribution has ended. Remember, whether you transfer cash or move shares in kind into a TFSA, the CRA treats it as a deemed disposition at the share's fair market value, triggering capital gain on the child's tax return. But now that the child is of age, that gain should typically fall under their tax return. And if their total income is small, they might be taxed lightly. Still, it's really important to weigh the timing of this. If the investments have soared, you'll probably want to see how the numbers look. If they haven't grown much yet, the tax consequences might be minimal anyways. Ultimately, the TFSA is a powerful tool and can be a perfect next step after an trust for account. Young adults have decades of compounding ahead of them, and they'll appreciate that whatever growth happens inside a TFSA won't come back to bite them at tax time. Now, if you're thinking, but what about an RRSP or something like the first time home savers account? That's where my final key point comes in. Beyond TFSAs, there are a couple of other places your newly adult child could steer their money. RRSPs are classic for retirement savings, and the FHSA is the new kid on the block that helps future homeowners. Both have tax advantages, but the timing matters. Let's first talk about the RRSP. Contributions to an RRSP earn you a tax deduction right away, which is great if you're working and in a higher tax bracket. For an 18-year-old, though, that might not carry a huge benefit if they're only making a small income from part-time jobs. Some folks suggest contributing to an RRSP early and carrying forward the deduction until your child's income is higher. Yes, that's actually a thing. They can park money in an RRSP, watch it grow tax deferred, and delay claiming the deduction until they have the bigger income to offset. And definitely be sure to check the RRSP contribution room before making any sort of RRSP contribution. 18-year-olds might not have a ton of room. They might have only accumulated a bit of room if they had a part-time job in past years while they were going through school. Then there's also the first-time home savings account, known as the FHSA, which is really meant to help first-time homebuyers. With the FHSA, you can put up to $8,000 a year or $40,000 over a lifetime. You get an RRSP style deduction and withdraw tax-free, provided that those withdrawals are used to purchase a first-time home within 15 years of opening the FHSA account. It's kind of like a cross between an RRSP and a TFSA. You get a tax deduction for contributions, and any growth inside is tax-free so long as you use the money to buy your first home within a certain time frame. That could be a really big game changer if your child is hoping to get into the real estate market by their late 20s or early 30s. In many parts of Canada, housing prices have been higher than ever, so starting early can be one way to pull it off without having to take on a massive mortgage. Now you might ask, well, how does the trust for account come into play here? If your child takes full ownership of the account at 18, that's money that they can then direct into these registered accounts. But keep in mind, once it's in their name, it's their choice. Ideally, you would sit down and talk about the pros and cons of each route. If your child has a part-time job, maybe building up a TFSA first is a good stepping stone, and then shifting some into a FHSA if home ownership is on their horizon. Or on the flip side, maybe they're keen on building an RRSP for the future. Every path has its pluses and minuses, but the key is to start that conversation, share your wisdom, and then let them make a call that fits their goals. But let me caution you. If your child just lumps everything into a money market fund in their name and calls it a day, they might miss out on years of compounding in these registered accounts. Or they might hit one big capital gain early on, but not think about the next 10 or 20 years. That's where bitted planning goes a long way. You can show them how the cost of waiting can mean missing out on huge growth opportunities. It doesn't have to be complicated. They don't have to be invested in complicated hedge funds or high-risk securities. Even a basic index fund in a TFSA or FHSA could result in a big payoff if they let it ride. The bottom line here, once your child turns 18, you're not forced to push them into any one route, but you can illustrate the benefits, whether it's an RSP for the retirement horizon, the FHSA for a future home, or a TFSA for everyday tax reinvesting. Each approach can make a tangible difference in how their money grows and how much tax they shell out over time. By now, you've just seen how much there is to think about with trust for accounts. From the attribution rules where your child is a minor, to the moment they take legal control at 18, to the range of registered account options they can consider. TFSA, FHSA, RRSP. Every step brings choices that can either create long-term value or trigger avoidable tax and planning issues. The truth is, when your child turns 18, you hit a fork in the road. Yes, the money becomes theirs, but it's also a powerful opportunity to teach them how to manage that wealth wisely. If you plan things right, timing sales, weighing tax implications, and looking ahead to how those funds can be better sheltered, you can turn that initial gift into something much more lasting. What you don't want is confusion or missed opportunity. Many families overlook how important the transition is. only to get caught off guard by tax slips, rush decisions, or money that gets parked in a savings account instead of something better suited to long-term goals. A little foresight can really go a long way. So whether your child is 14 or turning 18 next month, this is your window to start the conversation. Walk them through their options, share your thinking. Then give them the tools and confidence to take the next step, whether that's building a TFSA, saving for a first-time home, or investing toward their future in a tax-smart way. Because at the end of the day, an in-trust for account isn't just about giving your child money, it's more about giving them a head start with guidance, structure, and a path to grow into smart, capable financial decision makers. If your child's about to turn 18 or even a few years out, this is a rare window of opportunity. How you guide the handoff from an in-trust for account, whether it flows into a TFSA, fuels a future FHSA, or sparks retirement savings, can make a real difference. What questions do you still have about this transition? Drop them in the comments. I read every one, and your question might inspire a future video. And if you're sitting there thinking, this is helpful, but I'd love to talk through our situation specifically, then use the link down below to book a discovery call. We'll walk through your options and make sure things are set up in a way that suits your family and your goals. If you found value in this, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.